6th grade, Module 4, Lesson 28, Classwork. Mathematical Modeling Exercise. Juan has gained 20 pounds since last year. He now weighs 120 pounds. Rashad is 15 pounds heavier than Diego. If Rashad and Juan weighed the same amount last year, how much does Diego weigh? Let J represent Juan's weight last year in pounds, and let D represent Diego's weight in pounds. Draw a tape diagram to represent Juan's weight. So what we know about Juan's weight is that he's gained 20 pounds since last year, and he now weighs 120 pounds. So if I were to draw Juan's tape diagram, I know that he now weighs 120, so the whole here is going to be 120 pounds. And he's gained 20 pounds since last year. So he has an extra 20 pounds, which means that he weighed 100 pounds last year. But we don't want to put 100 because it says, let J represent Juan's weight last year. So here's Juan's weight in pounds last year. Okay, draw a tape diagram to represent Rashad's weight. Okay, so what do we know about Rashad's weight? We know that Rashad is 15 pounds heavier than Diego, but we don't know much about Diego yet. If Rashad and Juan weighed the same amount last year. So Rashad and Juan weighed the same amount last year. So remember, this J is Juan's weight last year. So I'm going to make it exactly the same size because that was Rashad's weight last year. And we know Rashad is 15 pounds heavier than Diego. So he has an extra 15 pounds on Diego. It says let D represent Diego. So Rashad last year was the same as Juan, so the same size as J. And then he is Diego plus 15 pounds. So then lastly, draw a tape diagram to represent Diego's weight. So Diego is just this size right here. So there is Diego. What would combining all three tape diagrams look like? Well, let's start with Juan. So we have J plus 20, and this is all 120. And then we would have, remember, Rashad is Juan's weight last year, and he is Diego plus 15. And then Diego is right here. So we can label them all. So this was Juan, Rashad, and Diego. Write an equation to represent Juan's tape diagram. All right, so Juan up here was J. So Juan plus the 20 is equal to 120. Write an equation to represent Rashad's tape diagram. So Rashad right here would be, so he's Diego plus 15, but that's not really that's not an equation. So we know we have Diego plus 15, but it needs to equal something. And the only whole we have is 120. So I can add on and use this whole thing. Diego plus 15 plus the 20 is going to be 120. So see where I got that from? The Diego plus 15 plus 20 is 120. So how can we use the final tape diagram or the equation above to answer the question presented? Or so basically, what did we just do? So we combined 15 and 20 from Rashad's equation. And the final tape diagram can be used to write a third equation for Diego's weight. Calculate Diego's weight. So we know that Diego is D, which we have up here. I'm just going to solve it over here. So D plus 15 plus 20 equals 120, or D plus 35 equals 120. So in order to get D alone, we can do plus 35, D plus 35. To get 35 away from there, we need to subtract 35, but what we do on one side, remember, we must do on the other. So we have minus 35, otherwise it's the same exact equation. So D will be equal to 120 minus 35, which is equal to 85. So Diego is equal to 85 pounds. So we can use identities to defend our thought that D plus 35 minus 35 equals D. So right, that's the additive inverse. Plus 35 minus 35 is basically saying D plus 0 equals D. Does your answer make sense? So we can go back and kind of check and see if what we've done makes sense. So if Diego equals 85 pounds and Rashad weighs 15 pounds more than Diego, so he's 100 pounds. And then Juan was equal to 120 pounds. Then that would all work. So let's say yes. If Diego weighs 85 pounds and Rashad weighs 15 pounds more than him, more than Diego, then Rashad weighs 100 pounds, which is what Juan weighed before he gained 20 pounds. Example 1. Marissa has twice as much money as Frank. Christina has $20 more than Marissa. If Christina has $100, how much money does Frank have? Let F represent the amount of money Frank has in dollars and M represent the amount of money Marissa has in dollars. Draw a tape diagram to represent the amount of money Frank has. Okay, so F is going to represent Frank and M is going to represent Marissa. So we really don't know much about how much money Frank has, aside that it would be half as much as Marissa. So let's just make one tape diagram and call it F. So there's Frank. But we do know that Marissa has twice as much money as Frank. So Marissa would be 2 Fs. So I'm just going to do another tape diagram, and they're not exactly the same size. I make this a little bit bigger. Whoops. So Marissa's is 2F. Draw a tape diagram to represent the amount of money Christina has. So Christina has $20 more than Marissa. So this right here, this total is M or Marissa. So Christina has $20 more than Marissa. So we could do, so here's Marissa's, and then she has $20 more. So I'm going to tag an extra $20 at the end of that. And we also know that Christina has $100. So this whole thing equals $100. Which tape diagram provides enough information to determine the value of the variable m? So the only one that even contains numbers that would lead us anywhere is Christina's. So because Frank, we have one tape diagram that has an F in it. And then Marissa's is just 2 of whatever Frank's is. But Christina's, we have numbers that we can work with. So let's say Christina's tape diagram. So write and solve the equation. So Christina's would be m plus 20 equals 100. Because we have the m and the 20, and they all equal 100. So that's where m plus 20 equals 100 came from. So then we need to get the m by itself. So let's do m plus 20 minus 20 would equal 100. We need to subtract 20 here as well. What we do on one side, we must do on the other. So m is equal to 100 minus 20 is 80. So that means Marissa is equal to $80. So that's exactly what this 80 represents. So 80 represents m equals 80, which means Marissa, what are we talking about? Marissa has $80. Now that we know Marissa has $80, how can we use this information to find out how much money Frank has? Well, we know that Marissa had twice as much money as Frank. So we know Marissa has twice as much money as Frank. So let's write an equation. So if Marissa's is equal to 80, so now I can replace this with 80. So that's 80. So 2f's is equal to 80. So 2f equals 80. Solve the equation. So we need to get f by itself. So this is saying 2 times f is equal to 80. So what we can do is divide by f. So we're going to do 2f divided by 2 equals 80. And then we're going to divide that by 2. So f is equal to 80 divided by 2 is 40, which means that Frank has $40. So does 40 make sense in the problem? Okay, so I would say yes, because if Frank has $40, then Marissa has twice this, which is $80. Then Christina has 100 because she has $20 more than Marissa. So it all makes sense. Exercises, Station 1. Rihanna is twice as old as Madeline, and Laura is 10 years older than Rihanna. If Laura is 50 years old, how old is Madeline? Let M represent Madeline's age in years. Let R represent Rayana's age in years. Okay. So Rayana is twice as old as Madeline. So let's do R, M, and L. So we can do 3 tape diagrams. So Rayana is twice Madeline. So I'm gonna do hers and put 2 M's in there. And so we've got Rayana's. Laura is 10 years older than Rayana. So Laura is going to be whatever Rayana is plus 10. And then we know that Madeline is just... Oh, wait, no. Madeline is just one of these M's. Okay, and we also know that Laura is 50 years old. So this whole thing is equal to 50 years old. Okay, so we want to know how old everyone is, right? So we can start by, the only one that we can really work with right now is Laura. So let's figure out how old Laura is. So Laura would be R plus 10 is equal to 50, because we have this R plus the 10 all adds up to 50. So to solve it, R plus 10 minus 10 would be equal to 50 minus 10. So R is equal to 40. So Laura is 40. Oh no, Laura is 50. That means that R, or Rayana, is 40 years old. So Rayana, how do you spell her name? Raeana is 40 years old. And we can use that because we know that Rayana is twice as old as Madeline. So 2 M's is equal to 40. So we can solve that by doing 2M divided by 2 is equal to 40 divided by 2, which would mean that M is equal to 40 divided by 2, 20. So that means that Madeline is 20 years old. So Rayana is 40, Madeline is 20, Laura is 50. Station 2. Carly has 90 apps on her phone. Braylon has half the amount of apps as Thies. If Carly has 3 times the amount of apps as Thies, how many apps does Braylon have? Let B represent the number of Braylon's apps and let T represent the number of Thies' apps. Okay, so we have Carly, Braylon, and Thies. Okay, so Carly has 90 apps on her phone. So that's easy. So whatever Carly's is 90. Braylon has half the amount of apps as Thies. So Braylon has half of whatever Thies has. use a lowercase b there. Let B, so how many apps does Braylon have? Carly has 3 times the amount of apps as Thies. So I jumped the gun on this one a little bit because we're going to need to make it bigger. So okay. So Carly has 3 times the amount as Thies. So we're going to do 1. So there's 1. And then I'm going to do 2 more of them. Okay, and this was equal, this whole thing is equal to 90. Okay, so now we know that Carly is equal to 90, but it's also equal to, we can figure out Thies by doing 3t, so 1, 2, 3t is equal to 90. And we can solve it. So 3 times t divided by 3 will be equal to 90 divided by 3. Or 3, just t. So we got the t by itself. So t is equal to 30. So it looks like Thies has 30 apps. So Braylon, so now we know that this is equal to 30, which would mean that Braylon, 2b, so there's 2 b's is equal to 30. So we can do 2 times b divided by 2 will be equal to 30 divided by 2. So b is equal to 15. 30 divided by 2 is 15. So Braylon has 15 apps on his phone. Station 3. Reggie ran for 180 yards during the last football game, which is 40 more yards than his previous personal best. Monte ran 50 more yards than Adrian during the game. If Monte ran the same amount of yards Reggie ran in one game for his previous personal best, how many yards did Adrian run? Let R represent the number of yards Reggie ran during his previous personal best, and A represent the number of yards Adrian ran. Okay, so we have Reggie, Monte, and Adrian. So we know that Reggie ran 180 yards during his last football game, which was 40 more yards than his previous. Monte ran 50 more than Adrian. Monte ran the same amount of yards Reggie ran in one game from his previous personal best. How many yards did Adrian run? So what we don't know anything about is really Adrian. They haven't given us much information, but we use Adrian in reference to a lot of other people. So I'm just going to use, so Adrian is just going to be A because we don't know anything about him. But we do know that Monte ran, so Monte ran 50 more yards than Adrian during the same game. So Monte is whatever Adrian was plus 50 more. And then Reggie ran for 180 yards during his last football game, which is 40 more than his previous personal best. So we know that he ran 180 yards. And we also know that Monte ran the same amount of yards Reggie ran in one game for his previous personal best. So Reggie's ran this, so that was what he ran at first, but he had an extra 40 yards, and the whole thing is equal to 180, because we knew that Monte's personal best is the same as Reggie's previous personal best. I know it's worded kind of confusing, but so we can figure out how much Reggie ran. Let's start with Reggie. So Reggie is, or we already know what Reggie is. He ran 180. That was his new personal best, but we're going to use that to figure out what goes down here. So we have R plus 40 is equal to 180. So we have, where did that come from? R plus 40, the whole thing's 180. So we can do R plus 40 minus 40 will be equal to 180 minus 40. So R is equal to 140. So now we know that this piece, because this is also equal to R, it's the same size as here, so that means that Monte ran 140. So Monte is 140 yards. Now we just need to figure out Adrian. So Adrian is A plus 50 equals 140. So I found that over here again. So A plus 50 is 140. So we can do A plus 50 minus 50 equals 140 minus 50. So A is equal to 140 minus 50, which is 90. So Adrian ran 90 yards. And station 4. Lance rides his bike downhill at a pace of 60 miles per hour. When Lance is riding uphill, he rides 8 miles per hour slower than on flat roads. If Lance's downhill speed is 4 times faster than his flat road speed, how fast does he travel uphill? Let F represent Lance's pace on flat roads in miles per hour, and U represent Lance's pace uphill in miles per hour. Downhill and flat road pace. So what we know is he rides his bike downhill at a pace of 60 miles per hour. So whatever downhill is, it's 60 miles per hour. So that total is 60. When he's riding uphill, he rides 8 miles per hour slower than on flat roads. So 8 miles per hour slower than flat roads. His downhill speed is 4 times faster than his flat road speed. So we don't know much about his flat road speed, so we're just going to make this flat road. But we know that it's 4 times, downhill is 4 times faster than his flat road. So downhill is 4F. And then we know that uphill, he rides 8 miles per hour slower than on flat roads. So if we had something that was equal to F, it's 8 miles per hour slower. So uphill plus 8 miles per hour would get us the flat road. So now we can start using our equations to piece this together. So let's start with finding out what his flat road speed is. So we can do that by finding we have 1, 2, 3, 4F is equal to 60. So 4F equals 60. We can do 4F divided by 4 will be equal to 60 divided by 4. So F is equal to 60 divided by 4, which is 15. So flat road is 15 miles per hour. But we really just care about the uphill and downhill pace. So let's find how much it is uphill. So uphill would be equal to, we have U uphill plus 8 is equal to F. And we know that F is equal to 15. So we can do U plus 8 minus 8 is equal to 15 minus 8. So U is equal to 15 minus 8 is 7 miles per hour. So the question is really just asking, how fast does he travel uphill? And we can say he travels uphill at 7 miles per hour.